I rise to speak on the Victorian Energy Efficiency Target Amendment Energy Upgrades for the Future Bill 2025. Now, this is a bill that amends the Victorian Energy Efficient Target Act of 2007 to make changes to the Victorian Energy Upgrade Program and the Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificates, which are generated by the energy upgrades. So this is a government program that has been set up by this government and it's been plagued with problems. It's a program that was supposed to assist, bring down the price of power and to reduce emissions. So it's worth noting that the price of power has gone up under the watch of this government. And in addition, the emissions for the last 2 years have also gone up. So there are major concerns with this scheme, not only because of the failure of the outcomes, but also around the scrutiny of the program. This government set up, once again, as we've seen by Labor governments time and time again, a program that was full of the ability to be subject to people rorting the system. So it was supposed to reduce energy. It was supposed to reduce energy costs and supposed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by providing access to discounted energy-efficient products and services, such as lights, fridges, air conditioners, heaters, for households in Victoria and businesses in Victoria. So even if that's a good concept, unfortunately, the government didn't put the appropriate processes and controls in place. So we saw rort after rort after rort. Many of us have had in our offices businesses coming to us saying, and it was a local cafe owner who rang me and said, I've had 6 fridges delivered. What's going on? This can't be a good use of taxpayer money. I mean, in a time of a cost of living crisis, that just smacks of waste and mismanagement and somebody taking a really big opportunity because there weren't the government scrutinies put in place for this program. And that's why in this bill, the government talks about making good as one of the clauses so that they can force people to make sure things work. Shouldn't that have been done years ago? So, prima facie, even if this is a good concept, the processes the government failed to put in place have resulted in extraordinary waste. I mean, we asked in the bill briefing for a list of the complaints to tell us what sort of complaint levels they've seen. Now, what we did get told back was there's only been 25 field visits. So only 25 times has the government gone out and actually looked at what the problem, the complaints is like. Now, we asked for the amount of complaints, but apparently the government couldn't give us the Department of Energy and Climate Action's amount of complaints they've received. So I'm not sure why we would be surprised, but I'm pretty confident it would be in the thousands. The amount of people I have had ring my office complaining about getting hassled and things not working, and I'll come to that a bit later. But in this program, the Victorian energy certificates that are generated are supposed to be delivered once the consumer's home's been upgraded. And one certificate represents a tonne of greenhouse gas emission. So the program requires large energy retailers to acquire and surrender these certificates based on the targets that are set by the government, and that's what's being changed in this bill. So what we're seeing is a government who can't meet the targets actually changing the legislation to be able to hide the fact that what they thought they could achieve, they clearly couldn't. And just remember, we did as the Liberal Nationals put forward prior to this term, this time, we suggested that we actually legislate these targets so, the government has to be accountable and actually meet targets as we propose that we should all be accountable for. But the reality is, this is a government who opposed that at the time, have now gone and tried to put some targets in place with no accountability factors for them to have to meet those targets, and they're certainly not meeting those targets, and that's why we're here today. But these rorts that people are seeing with fridges delivered and hot water services that aren't up to scratch for people to actually use in their home, and so we've seen some of those, some in the scheme being withdrawn due to the fact that they're not effective, have actually cost money. And that's what we see from this government time and time again. You know, rorts actually cost money, and that's why we're seeing a government who can't manage money. And today, the figures out are we're the highest taxing state in the nation, the highest taxing state. And that's because when you waste money, someone's got to pay for it. And when you can't set targets and you can't give certainty to investment, then you're not going to get long-term investment into new energy schemes that will bring down the cost, because there's just no policy certainty. And that's what this government have overseen. And this debacle of a program is also an example of that. So what we've seen is the government's price of power. You know, when families get their bills, they get a bill that's greater, much greater than they were expecting, because the price of energy every time they get a bill seems to go up more and more. So this scheme was supposed to bring down the cost of power by $110. But in the bill is embedded an environmental cost. And the government have said that the cost on the bill is $135 for this cost. So there's actually not $110 saved, but $135 paid extra for this scheme to put your efficient lights in, which actually aren't saving you money. So, you know, there's a real issue here with this energy upgrade scheme making it more affordable for people's electricity, because it's clearly not. The environmental cost is actually costing more than the savings that the families are supposed to be achieving, and that's clear when people get their bills and their bills have gone up. So the energy upgrade program is afflicted by poor regulation and scams, and once again, remember all those fridges being delivered. Energy efficiency is actually an area we, on the Liberal National side of the House, clearly support. And to be an environmental action which delivers good business and housekeeping and lower costs is something should be supported. But when a scheme has been so maladministered by the Allan Labor government, how can we trust them to administer any program appropriately? So the government commenced this 2-year review and they decided to move the parameters. But, you know, in my office, I continually get complaints about people being harassed and harangued, and it's 5 years since the member for Lowan and myself approached the minister and said, come on, put something in place to protect people. You know, I've got an example in my office of a 92-year-old lady in my electorate who got an electric hot water system from one of these government energy schemes. Now, she's 92. She doesn't use emails. You know, it was all paperwork, and at 92 she couldn't find where that was. So when the unit was faulty, she had no idea who to call or who to help with her warranty. So, you know, these are the sorts of problems that people are seeing, but also this absolute harassment that's been allowed to go on under this government and seems to be back, despite the fact that, like I said, the member for Lowan and myself particularly spoke to the minister and said, you know, put some protections in place. Our people are concerned that they're getting hassled by people that are representing the government, they say, who are getting into their homes, putting things in that don't work, and then they've got no recourse because they haven't got any idea where it all comes from, but apparently it was coming from the government is what they've been told. So it's been an absolute debacle of a scheme. It's cost more money than it's saved. It's resulted in more emissions, so the environment hasn't benefited. It's caused increased cost on the bills of families, and therefore it's an abject failure. And here we are trying to change the process so the government can reset the targets, because they've absolutely failed the families of Victoria, they've failed the environment, and they're trying to cover it up by changing the targets, by putting it in a bill called Energy Target Amendment Bill, when they're really just one big failure of a program that has been delivering equipment that people don't necessarily want, When it goes wrong, they've got no recourse, and it's certainly not saving them any money in their power bills, and that's what this government continues to do to Victorians.